Kino pavasaris. Kovo 18, balandžio 5 dienomis visoje Lietuvoje. Didysis partneris – Ergo draudimo grupė. Informaciniai partneriai – TV3, 15 min, žmonės.
Mūsų karta pirmoji supratusi, kaip iš lėto kenkiame gamtai. Ir vienintelė, žinanti, kad dar yra laiko ją išsaugoti. Apsaugokime mūsų visų ateitį. Ergo.
Geriausius kino pavasario filmus parodys žiūrimiausia televizija TV3. Šeštadieniais 22:40.
Festivalis Kino pavasaris jūsų namuose. Visus filmus žiūrėkite Telia televizijoje jums patogiu metu. Telia. Įdomiau tik gyvenimas.
Įtraukia nuo pat pirmųjų sekundžių. Vienu prisėdimu abi serijos susivalgė. Kaip lietuviškas tikrai neblogas.
Hello, labas. My name is Andrei Tănăsescu. I'm one of the programmers of the festival. And I would like to, first of all, extend a warm welcome to all of our Kino Pavasaris and 15-minute viewers. And also remind you that, of course, we are live with this Q&A for Feast. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to throw them at us. That being said, I would like to welcome the director of Feast, Timu Leyendekkeriu. Tim, hello, and thank you for being with us.
Thanks for inviting me. Yeah.
I have to first of all commend you on a very, very complex movie. It took myself and my fellow colleague programmers, Mante, Aista, and Maria. We were absolutely taken with the film. Not just because of the subject matter, but the way that you approached to analyze a very controversial case, event, through multiple areas of investigation. And I would like to actually open up the conversation by asking you to relate to us a bit more about the case, when it took place, the kind of ripple effect it had in Dutch society, and eventually kind of what drew you to make this film.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so it was obviously a very controversial case, as you said. Well, maybe to summarize for people who haven't seen it or it has been a while. So in 2008, 3 men were convicted for inviting other men to their house for sex parties, and then they would drug their guests and inject them with their own HIV-infected blood. And I was, like many people who read about this, I was very appalled by this, and it was hard to just imagine how someone could do something like this. And around that time, I was also reading Symposium by Plato. I'm not sure how it's translated in your country, but in English it's translated also as the banquet. And this is a text where 7 men, also during orgies, but very different orgies, invited other. We're talking about the meaning of eros and beauty and truth. And I thought these were such huge opposites, these 2 texts, but in the same way there were also some similarities that were maybe not always obvious, but interesting, and I was interested in to juxtapose those 2 things. And which I think the most important take that the most important thing that I get from Plato's text is Socrates, who has the end monologue. So there are 6 monologues. 6 guys, like notable men, have made these beautiful speeches on what truth, beauty, and love is. And then Socrates says, well, you all did your best, and you made these wonderful monologues, and thesis, but nobody got it right, because of course this was also something that Socrates is famous about. He said the truth is not, it's not possible to pin down an idea or a truth. It's always elliptical, so it's always moving, and this also became very apparent in this case in Groningen, which is on at first glance it's super obvious that there's three very bad guys and there's a group of victims, and this is the case, and this stays the case. But the more you zoom in and zoom out and go in and out, this is what I've been trying to do with the film. You also see other perspectives, which doesn't mean that I take sides for any of the perspectives. And this is also what I wanted to show in the film, that it's also possible to show different angles and see what that brings you, instead of bringing something fully cooked with your ideas on what things are. I really wanted to activate the audience. So yeah, in thinking for themselves.
And can you walk us through a bit of the process in which you took to create, because the film is comprised of almost like 7 episodes, 7 segments. I mean, first of all, were there some topics, some particularities of the case, or of what kind of stayed away from, and you did not want to delve further into it? And well, let's just start with that question, because
that's interesting. It's I don't think so. No, I think I was very open to. So what you define now is something that would define the script from a negative viewpoint, like what wouldn't you do? What can you not access? And of course, while writing a script, I was much looking at what we could do to make the film and what would make it interesting. Well, and this is a spoiler maybe for people who haven't seen the film yet, but there's an interview with one of the perpetrators in the film, which is in fact an actor, and this is also revealed in the film, but also in a way that I think it's, well, I got this as feedback. A lot of people are not sure if he's real or not. So this is also what I really wanted. But this was one of the ideas, to not include, well, to have at least one real perpetrator in it and one who isn't real. So I chose not to work with one of the real perpetrators. I mean, I didn't even ask him if he wanted to participate. Because I was very much more interested in the role of one of the other guys, who was both the lover and, well, who was a bit both inside and outside of the things that happened there. And this thought, for me, that was interesting also because I realized that he also perceived himself as much as a victim as a perpetrator, and I thought that was an interesting position. So yeah, of course, I discriminated in who to invite, for instance, in the film, and which perspectives to take on, but also, yeah, I was just thinking what are the most interesting things to look at. Yeah.
And I mean, we should point out that it's what you do. The structure of the film is very well thought out. You know, first of all, the opening montage, which is of kind of granular close-ups of and very very rapid cut close-ups of skin, and you know, with the title Feast, almost, you know, prepares a certain type of or rather, you know, brings the audience into a certain type of approach on the topic. But then you immediately switch to. I mean, this is after the police evidence scene, which in itself is. I mean, there are moments of hilarity, but then at the same time, you know, I mean, the little objects are somewhat funny juxtaposed next to themselves, but while at the same time others kind of offer a much more intimate and much more kind of weightier contour of the context of the audio scene. But then what I want to get at is you know, the discussion amongst the three men, which are quoting Plato. which themselves essentially establish the kind of the conceptual groundwork of analytical approach to this, and then you cut to their mirrors, which essentially perform a type of almost critical take on what they're seeing. Which I just want to say that this is a very, very kind of it's a good way to prepare the viewer to critically analyze and to go beyond what is just your first reaction of the elements that you will be getting from the film. So I guess with that very long-winded description, I wanted to ask, I mean, how precisely structured was the film? Was there at one point that you wanted to perhaps switch some of the segments around? Were there other segments which you had shot but you did not include?
Yeah, from the very maybe not from the very starting point, but it took a long time to make the film because it was not obvious to the funding bodies in the Netherlands to give money to such a project. It did tick some of their boxes, but also it was a bit, yeah, it was hard to get it made. So it also took quite some time to get it made. But to be honest, the order was quite fixed from the beginning. I mean, I didn't fix it to say, well, this cannot move anymore. On the contrary, so there was a moment that the Dutch Film Fund, who financed the full film, almost like 80% of the film, they said, well, they finally gave green light, but they said, we still would like you to work with a like a script coach. And I was a bit afraid of that because I was afraid that that would lead to putting the film in a certain mold, in like, there's many people who have an idea of what cinema should be. These people, they create certain molds to fit the things in so they can understand things better and they can talk about it, etc. So, but I was super happy that the Film Fund gave me the freedom to choose to work with someone that was not necessarily of the cinema field, but they give me carte blanche to choose a script coach. And this led to working with Koen Haagdoorns, who was at the time a dramaturge at a theater company in Belgium, NT Gent. So we went through the script a lot, and we basically concluded that the way it worked in the beginning, this should be the order. There's only one thing that changed so the sequence, the shots with the men that you see laying in the city landscapes or outside, in between the sequences. This was originally one take, so you would see like 7 men in different positions in these landscapes, and that would have been like one of the 7 sequences. But we decided together to interweave that through the film. So for me, this is still one sequence, then ending in the sequence on the beach, of course, because this is also part of this. But then it also comes to life in a way, of course, in the end. So that's the big difference. That's, I think, the only difference between the not the first draft, of course, I rewrote, but the sequence, the order, it was very determined in the beginning.
And you also worked with different cinematographers, I believe, for each segment, correct?
Yeah, and this is so. At the one hand, like I just said, things were fixed, but I also wanted to give the film some breathing space, and also to see what would happen, what these 7 sets of 7 pairs of eyes would give the film, and also in line with the concept or this idea of Socrates, that this should be about 7 visions and 7 ideas. I thought it would be good to really work with 7 different DOPs and you know, even though we wrote the script, or I wrote the script, yeah, with Geert-Jan Reinders, the Dutch playwright. Of course, DOP, everybody who's on the crew has their own, give their own thing to the film. But DOP is particularly very influential in how film looks, of course. So I thought this would be really the department that would be most interesting to give a bit, to give this diversity to. Yeah.
I mean, one thing that really kind of took us, or especially myself, kind of aback by the film is kind of it opens up a discussion for, I mean, like you said, and you know, well, those who have seen the film, it is a very controversial topic. But very often we are confronted with these cases in the media, and you know, the analysis, or rather the investigation of the larger issues or the larger ideas, or rather, you know, societal, individual, what have you, all these variables are very rarely analyzed. You know, very often the perpetrators are demonized, perhaps rightly so, or not necessarily. But what I want to get at is your film offers, in a very almost procedural way, a way to not fully humanize, but to really explore the humanity and really what kind of, or rather, the human context of the case itself. And I would say that, you know, on what very often, and you point to this, that you know, victims themselves are also dehumanized, particularly in the and in this case, you know, we have the segment at the end where you have the police investigation essentially putting the onus on the victim, and opening up larger discussions of you know, victimization of sexuality, etc. So I wanted to basically ask you about this aspect of humanizing something that is so readily demonized by society at large.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm very happy to hear your analysis, because this is really something that I wanted to put in. Well, this is very key to the film itself, so I'm very happy when this transpires, of course. Humanizing or dehumanizing? Well, first of all, I think what happens when you, for instance, read something like a case like this, you read that someone did something horrible to someone else, you think this person is a monster, the person who did that, and I think this is very natural, and you think this is unhuman, or at least not what you want a human being to be. But like you said, I think this is very often where the discussion stops. And I think in arts, or in film, or well, yeah, in arts in general, I think this can be a place to open up these, well, to go beyond that first question, you know, to go beyond what's good or bad, but really to, yeah, like maybe like a surgeon almost really analyze things. And I say like a surgeon, which is not a good metaphor, because I don't have the pretense that we made like a full analysis. I think one of the ideas is, I hope one of the ideas in the film transpires also, is that there's no such thing as going into the right direction. There's many directions, and there's more obvious, and there's some less obvious, but they're all worth challenging or investigating. Yeah. So maybe it's not a surgeon, it's more, you know, I'm not a super big fan of the term, especially not in contemporary arts, of the term experimental, but in a way it's quite literally experimental, because you really look at these different viewpoints and see what that delivers to the film, in juxtaposing them, in like having them resonate into each other. Yeah, and what I hope is, yeah, sorry.
No, sorry, go ahead.
So I was definitely not on on a mission to humanize victims or perpetrators. It was much more to look behind the discussions that this kind of behavior and this kind of criminal behavior also. To look at it, what happens when you extend the discussion, when you look around it, instead of writing your tweet or writing your article for a newspaper. So I think 90 minutes really gives you also the possibility to take that time and to go back and forth and look behind things more than a newspaper clipping, for instance.
Yeah. And in other interviews, you mentioned that it's not necessarily a hybrid film, and what you would prefer to actually describe the movie as is a proposal or a set of proposals.
Yeah.
Which I find it very, very, very fitting to this. And what I found really impressive is the way that, on one hand, in any film of this kind, and I would bring up, for instance, Lucian Casting Taylor and Verena Paravel's Caniba, which also deals with a very, very controversial subject, which is kind of embodied in a person. But the film goes beyond that, and what is really impressive in Feast in particular is the way that you manage to observe what can be observed, while at the same time also describe or reach out to that which is only hinted, not just in the words of the perpetrators, or be they real from transcripts or kind of fictionalized, but the experience, the particular desire that is kind of enveloped in this case, in the root kind of cause of it. And again, sorry for the long-winded kind of prep, but I really wanted to ask you about the body, because I think the film proposes very, very interesting questions about the body as first of all, as a biological organism, the body as a social construct, but also a body as a vehicle for exploring the metaphysical, which you do magnificently in some of the kind of segments themselves visually, in particular. But perhaps if you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I think if you want to talk about truth and what truth is, I think truth is a lot about perception, and the way we perceive truth is through our bodies. And this is one of the reasons, of course. I mean, it's besides of the obvious reason, because this is also like sexually misconduct, to say the least. What happened there? But also, yeah, to see to take the body also as this vessel that observes and that feels and sees and smells, and and yeah, you're right. I think it was very important to me to give way to that in the film itself, to the bodily experience, but also how you see another body. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, but this, I mean, the film also, and what we're discussing here, also brings up more questions about which should always be kind of part of, not necessarily of our common, day-to-day analysis, but notions of consent, of limits, and how easy the threshold between pain and pleasure, between legality and crime, for instance. And how that threshold very easily could get erased, during moments of ecstasy, for instance, or moments of kind of that go beyond rational thought.
Well, of course, what it's very simple, but also very striking. I think the fact that when things that like these take place, when there's sexual misconduct in, well, let's keep it to this case, where there were many people at these parties and things happened that weren't okay, to say the least. But there were also other things happening, and this is what I'm trying to say in this exposure. It was not for nothing that other people were attracted to getting there. Again, I mean, you should be very careful to emphasize all the time that they weren't asking for what they got there, but still, partly they got what they asked for, because it was also a very pleasurable experience, I think. So this is sorry, now I'm oh yeah, no, of course, yeah. So but what happens is, as long as this stays in the intimate atmosphere, in the dark, let's say, where like in a non-shared experience, in a not like shared experience with the common with the outside world, there's a lot possible. So not only in sexual sense, like that you can, you know, if there's a consent between people, can explore your sexuality and do maybe things that other people would find appalling. For instance, the whole thing with needles and blood, to me personally, this is very hard to imagine as a sexual act. But there's many things that I find hard to imagine. So, but this happens, and this is also what's happening there. It's only when the light from the outside light comes in, almost like this is when these things are starting to mean something different. And this is also the same thing as with morality. It can be very hard to, I think, to decompose a personal experience and to say what was right in what you experienced, and what was good and what should be and what shouldn't have, when it's still in this realm, in this intimate realm. And it's only when you zoom out, you can do that yourself, but in this case also it happened because it became a court case, so it became very visible. Then other things become visible, and
which is which reminds me of the scene when you actually bring a light onto one of the perpetrators during the middle segment.
Actually, this is really a literal reference to that. Bringing that light and opening up and exposing someone also, which in this case is not a real exposure, but also what I'm also exposing there is our viewing experience. I think this is the exposure that I want to show there. Yeah.
Which, apropos viewing experience, even I would identify myself in this. I always wanted to see and to actually to visualize one of them, one of the three, and actually see what they look like. It's it's a certain need that has kind of like been embedded in us by this desire to put a human image to something evil, or to something that is almost incomprehensible outside of our normal sphere.
In the first, in the segment which you just mentioned, where the three guys are in the living room and being observed by actors, by the same actors.
Yeah.
So the actor who plays Hans, he really wanted to see photo. This is even different, of course, because he had to play him, but he really wanted to see photographs of the real Hans. But this was not possible to provide that. But I felt, and I really understood this. It's not to see which wig he should use or whatever, but it's just like you said. You want to. The face of the behind these faces are always very interesting, and it's almost maybe to see if it's possible to identify more with their physical appearance than with what they did. Maybe almost to find, like, I don't know. But I have the same. I'm writing another script now, and I'm also writing on someone who did something awful to someone else, and it's also based on a true story. And this guy it's possible to find him online, with, of course, redacted imagery, but it was almost one of the first things I went to find this picture, to see how he looked like, to see what it looks like when he's out instead of inside these dark stories.
Which I mean, that analogy reminds me of the segment with the tulips. You know, it's very easy to kind of isolate that one tulip that has been afflicted by the virus because it stands out from the crowd.
Yeah, and there it becomes extremely visible. True. Yeah, and aesthetic also. That's even another thing. I mean, this is something what really attracted me in that story, and which is not super apparent in the film anymore because it wasn't so relevant to to this film. But the idea that a body gets beautified by this infection and being commercialized. Yes, quite interesting to see all those perspectives that you can have around that, the notion of the virus, and yeah.
And of course, given the time that we find ourselves in, I think it's only natural to perhaps ask you, you know, the kind of the timing of the film, and in particular that segment, what it discusses, and rather how it applies to our current climate. You know, given the COVID pandemic that has been taking over the world, and the herd immunity, and etc. It is a bit of a superficial kind of, you know, a link between your film and what's going on. But I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. No, I don't think it's superficial. It's very natural. I mean, this is what we do all the time. Maybe it's a bit tedious because we're a bit tired of it, right? Of like putting everything in the context of this super special period we're in together now. But I think if one film, or maybe more, but if this film is, I mean, really lends itself to that. I mean, to say, wait, well, it's about virus, and this is what we talk about every day. I was very happy that we wrapped before the pandemic started, for many reasons. One of the reasons was that it meant that I had something to do when we were in lockdown, because I could edit. But also because it didn't inform the shooting at all, or the whole production process. It didn't influence that at all. It wasn't there yet. But of course, viruses have always been there, and we're looking at a clip now of the film. Is it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this has been. It wasn't like a direct influence, like the COVID virus wasn't part of the film, and I'm happy that I don't know what would have happened. Maybe I would have thought, well, it's good maybe to include a little bit of our current situation, but no, I think it was good that we wrapped it before. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of bittersweet to. I'm not even bittersweet, but I think I'm happy that I can propose another perspective on many discussions about viruses now, and I think that's a good thing, because I hope that the film really does that and looks at viruses from different perspectives, as like we discuss it now. At the same time, of course, but this is something stupid to say maybe, but we're talking the way we're talking now, and we're not at a festival together. It's also this virus that keeping us apart, and also keeping my film online, which is not the best place to experience it. It's not the place that I made it for. Yeah.
No, I mean, and everybody that has seen the film can really appreciate its visual kind of, and very, very striking visual aspect, and the need for, because while the film discusses a very particular case, it also discusses something that belongs to society, regardless whether we want to ignore it, or kind of, again, for lack of a better word, demonize it and kind of cast it away. And there's a lot to be said about the communal experience of really engaging into something like this.
Yeah, this is also something that you mentioned, like the demonizing, but also like maybe it's also the word is like what we really tend to do is look at things and put it, detach ourselves from it and say, well, this is someone else, this is something else, this is a situation. And it's not even about this could happen to you, because I mean, the film goes beyond that. I doubt that this literally could happen to a lot of people, but it's really even something that's so far from many people. I hope it's still possible to identify with parts of it, with parts that are being said. And also, I mean, not to make a commercial for the film to see it again, but I really hope that people, I think it's a film that you can see twice, and I really think it's a film that you can see the second time on a big screen, and you will see a lot of different things also when time has passed. So I really hope, I mean, in the Netherlands we have a distribution deal, so there it will be in cinemas when that's possible again. And I hope that will be in many other countries. It will be the same. Yeah.
And I mean, granted, the film just started its life, so to speak. And this is something that I forgot to mention at the beginning. I'm very sorry for it, but Feast premiered at Rotterdam just a couple of months ago, and then it played Cinéma du Réel, where it won the main prize for first films. So you're really at the beginning of the film's kind of life, and we really hope that it does kind of travel and bring people together.
True. Yeah, thank you for reminding. that's not. But you're right. It's the beginning of I hope of some happy. I mean, the film will be visible, and maybe even also, in theaters at festivals. But until then. This is the second best thing, and it's still great that there's so much appreciation for the film. And when I say appreciation, that doesn't mean like everybody likes the film. This is also not something that I anticipated. In fact, I think there's more people that like the film than I anticipated. But it was really the film that I wanted to make. I'm very grateful that there's platforms like your festival also that take this risk of maybe not pleasing their audience necessarily with films that are dead, that are maybe more than just pleasing films, but maybe even food for thought films or whatever. But I think this is quite a complex film, and I'm super happy that people choose to share that with their audiences. So thanks a lot for that also.
No, thank you. But on a somewhat closing note, because we're running out of time, the theme that we have for this year's festival and for the edition is to act and or to be. It's another form of a proposal of a theme that we kind of curated a particular program for it, with films that really kind of touch upon this question. And I'm wondering, and I think in the case of your film, it also applies quite aptly. And I wanted to ask if you could perhaps speak about Feast vis-a-vis our theme of to act and or to be.
Yes, I mean, I think it has a lot to do with identity, of course, who you think you are, the way you present yourself to others. I mean, and this is not a solid thing. I mean, this is very fluid. And for instance, one of the people in my film, Hans, he is, like I said before, I perceive him as a perpetrator. This is also, I mean, he has been convicted for horrible things, but he's also, another part of his identity is that he is a victim, because he also sees himself as a victim of one of the people he did that with, for instance. So even in the idea of being yourself and acting out oneself, there's so much to explore. And this is a big part of the film. I mean, there's even in meta sense, I mean, there's also being reflected on that in the, let's say, the Plato scene in the living room, where also one of the acted perpetrators talks about this, how people project things in him, and that makes him what they want him to be. He fulfills a role that they want him to fulfill, and he takes that much too far. You could say almost that he sticks, and he gets lost in this. But at the same time, he really analyzes this. So yeah, no, I think it quite fits your theme of the year. Yeah.
Okay, and just one last question from me, because I was very curious about this. There's an insert of a pointing hand just a bit at the beginning of the film. I wondered if you could shed a bit of light on that.
No, it's funny because I'd be happy to, but I tried to find it. I thought it would be of Jodorowsky's Holy Mountain. It felt a bit, but it was a still that I found on Tumblr. I've been on Tumblr a lot in that was like 5 years ago, until 5 years ago, and I just really liked that image. But through image searches and whatever, I never found what it was and where it came from. But I just really liked the image, and I really liked to be, I want to be subtle about a lot of things, but I want to juxtapose that with very harsh comments on. This gesture is, of course, is saying that it's saying that you shouldn't do things. It's very moral, and I really want to also be clear from the beginning that even though I don't take sides, the film is still it's also about morality, and I think morality is also important. And if we use it in the right ways, I think it's very beneficial to becoming also a better person. So only I think it's good if we emancipate ourselves a little bit from what we think that the good morals are, or maybe give a bit of space to each other. So, but I really like this one finger, like, okay, this is my finger saying it's not just you cannot just do anything. There's also limits there.
Yeah. And
but it's also a priest,
I
think, who does it.
It's a priest that.
I think so, because it has this habit, like
yeah.
So it feels a bit but it's hard to. It's also funny to talk about your work in terms of being able to analyze everything. It's also, of course, you put things in it too, because it feels good. But so, what's your interpretation?
I took it as, it almost like the American Sam. It kind of like this concerns you, the viewer. This concerns you as an individual, but also as a society. And it concerns not you in terms of your day-to-day choices, but it concerns the human nature that is, or rather that we share, regardless of how. And it's not, like you said, it's not a statement of accepting the acts, but rather to understand really where they came from, and to understand that that limit, to understand also personal search, personal desire, how far one can go, and really where that search should stop.
Yeah. Cool. That's a better answer than my answer. I will use it for the next time.
But speaking of stopping, unfortunately, we will have to end the Q&A session. But Tim, thank you very much for the movie.
Sure.
And for your time.
Yeah, thank you for projecting it and for the conversation. Thanks.
And thank you to all of our viewers, and we highly encourage you to revisit Feast. Thank you, and that's you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Een gebruikte injectienaald. 1 dildo vuist. 1 halve zak borrelnootjes.
En op een gegeven moment wilde ik dat hij stopte, dat deed hij niet.